In this video, you're going to see Frank give his thoughts on why he believes the Bible is reliable. And at the end of the video, I'll give you my thoughts.
If you don't trust the Bible and ancient texts, what could make you believe in the resurrection?
If you don't, well, I guess my question would be, why wouldn't you trust these ancient texts if you evaluate them and you come to the conclusion they're historically reliable? Why would this be invented? That kind of thing. Go ahead.
You don't come to the conclusion that they're historically reliable.
Okay, my question would be, why do you think they're not?
Because they were written 100, 200 years later.
Later than what?
Later than when Jesus was crucified.
Where did you come up with those dates?
Google.
Huh?
I just looked it up. It was like 100. It was written, or published, the Hebrew Bible was published around 100 AC. He was killed in 30 AC. The life expectancy is probably shorter then, and it said it was published, so that's like 7 years. They were already 30 or 40, so they're either old and senile or dead, so.
Run those dates by me again.
It was 100 when the Hebrew Bible was published about, because we don't actually know, and then 30 when he was
the
killed.
Hebrew Bible, you mean the Old Testament?
No, it said, well, how would they publish the Old Testament after he died?
No. We have Old Testament documents prior to Jesus.
Okay.
We have the Septuagint, which was 250 BC. So that's 250 years prior to Jesus. We have the whole, we have Dead Sea Scrolls. We have a scroll, the entire book of Isaiah from like 150 BC. So the Old Testament's written before Jesus. You get that, right?
Yeah, but when was it published? Do you know?
What do you mean published?
Well, yeah, I can show you what it said. Like it said, it was.
If it's on the internet, it's got to be true, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, so when was the Bible published?
Okay. First of all, the documents we call the New Testament were written anywhere between, say, 40 AD and I believe 70 AD. Okay. Jesus was crucified in 33 AD. Okay. Now, the sources inside those documents go all the way back to the event of the resurrection itself. In fact, the earliest evidence for the resurrection is recorded in a passage we call 1 Corinthians 15, verses 3 to 8, where Paul says, "What I received of first importance I pass on to you." So Paul is writing in about 55 AD to the church at Corinth in Greece, and he's quoting a section that was memorized that even atheistic scholars agree goes all the way back near 33 AD. And that section talks about who Jesus appeared to after he was resurrected. So despite the fact that Paul is writing it in 55 AD, about 22 years after the resurrection event, the data that Paul is writing down goes all the way back to the event itself.
Are the Gospels truly reliable, as Frank Turk says? Well, we got to look at the facts. The people who were following Jesus, they were illiterate people. They don't know how to read. They don't know how to write. People who wrote the Gospels were not followers of Jesus. They were not eyewitness accounts. They were writing oral traditions. This story about Jesus and the crucifixion, it was just an oral tradition. They didn't actually witness it. And now he says he interviewed people who witnessed it, Matthew, Luke, and John. How will we know that if we don't know who wrote the books? How will we know they interviewed people who actually witnessed the event? That's not probable. Now we look at other facts. Mark was the first gospel. It was written about 60 to 65 CE, and then 80 to 85 CE it was Matthew and Luke. Well, Matthew and Luke, they used Mark as a reference. They use Mark as a reference. Their story, but their stories don't align with each other, and that becomes another problem, because if I'm Matthew and Luke and I'm reading Mark and using Mark as a reference to write why is my story different? Why is it that Mark, Mary, the mother of James, and Salome went to see the tomb? And then in Mark, it was just to Mary. And then in Luke, it was Mary, Joanna, and a bunch of the females. And in John, it was just Mary. And then in John, Mary was told to go to the disciples, but in the Synoptic Gospel, she wasn't told that. When Mark, Mary goes in there, who do they see? They see a man with a white robe. And then in Matthew, they see an angel. And then they see two men in Jude. Then the story continues to change and change and change. If I'm Matthew and I'm Luke and I'm writing based on what I'm reading off of Mark, isn't the story the exact same story? The fiction, what Jesus was saying and doing, it wasn't the same. What becomes really problematic is that Gospels, they don't actually exist. We don't have those Gospels. Originals don't exist. Copies are copies are copies. Well, this manuscript that we have is the Codex Sinaiticus. The Codex Sinaiticus, some people say 35,000 edits. So now you look at those facts. Who wrote them? All say the same thing. Eyewitness, oral tradition. All this manuscript that we have is not even the original. I know a Christian can overlook those problems. Hey, it doesn't matter. I still believe in the crucifixion. Still believe that Jesus died, he rose. That's not a problem. But for you to try to convince me those facts, in your opinion, for most people, that's not good enough. You can't really persuade people to become a Christian. You know facts. I know you're an apologetic. The Bible says it's good enough for you. I'm not one of those. I need the facts before I could believe something. And with the facts about the Bible, it's not good enough for me to believe. In my opinion, is the Bible reliable? Definitely not.